Oh, well.
Push the button on the bottom.
Morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Father Joe Boisel.
In light of religious news, did anybody see that the Michigan Wolverines won the national championship? And it reminded me of a verse from Holy Scripture that comes from the book of Job. Oh Lord, why do the wicked prosper? Pray with me, will you? A prayer for the whole human family. Almighty God, you made us in your own image, and when our love for you failed, your love for us remained steadfast. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infects our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your good purposes on earth, that in your good time, all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Amen.
Thank you, Father Joe. And lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Catherine Signs.
Good morning, Rotarians. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, goodwill and better friendships. And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Catherine. And we have a bundle of January birthdays. Number one is Chris Barker. January 1. Elizabeth Kowalik, January 3rd. Mike Swain, January 8th. Bill Budo, January 16th. Joe Boisel, January 17th. George Snyder, January 25th. Ralph Day, January 27th. Rich Warfield, January 28th. And Phil Warburton, January 31st. So.
Hey, well, happy birthday to all of us January babies. Okay, if everyone would join me in singing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Thank you.
And we have some people who have a Rotary anniversary. Terry Bortnick, January 1st, 2021, 3 years. I wonder how in the world you joined January 1st. Tom Vince, January 1st, 1970, 54 years. Catherine Signs, January 3rd, 2013, 11 years. And Evan McCauley, January 28th, 2015, 9 years. So congratulations to all of those Rotarians. And now our president, Terry Bortnick.
Good morning, Rotarians. I hope everybody is warm and toasty today. Obviously, in here it is. So they must have known what it was going to be like outside. Okay, so this month we continue to gather socks and gloves for the Haven Arrest. Okay, that's badly needed items down there, especially at this time of year. Our board of directors meeting is today after the meeting. Everyone is invited to attend. Of course, we need our board of directors there, but anybody is welcome to come and attend, listen to what some of our current issues are. After our discussion last week, I think we have a few things we need to discuss today at the meeting. So anybody is welcome to come. I did go on, Gina and Jamie are asking for help for the speech contest. So I don't know if any of you have gone online to sign up to, I saw Mimi and Marilyn and I signed up just this morning. I went through and it's really easy. All you do is click on the link and fill your name in a spot. And the kids really appreciate it because they need an audience to give their speeches to. Gives them that good feedback and it's beneficial to everyone to have that audience for them. Other board meetings to be determined. I don't see Keith here today, so I'm not sure. Doug, do you have a foundation meeting next week? Okay, usually the third week. So those of you who are on the foundation board can plan on that. Okay, do we have our speaker linked in? Okay, great. Okay, today we are very pleased to have Dr. Sarah Adams, who is the wife of our very own John Adams. And she's speaking to us from sunny Florida. So I hope you're having a good sunny morning. We are not. Be glad you're in Florida yesterday and today. Dr. Adams is a pediatrician with Akron Children's Hospital in Hudson. She received her Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Akron and attended the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. Working as a pediatrician for over 27 years, she enjoys incorporating her real-life experience as a mother into her pediatric practice, as well as her own podcast called Growing Up with Dr. Sarah. Dr. Adams is a member of the Mental Health and Wellness Committee and Patient Experience Committee at Akron Children's Hospital Community Outreach, promoting healthy lifestyles in children and their families, led her to speak to surrounding communities as well as for the Ohio American Academy of Pediatrics. She's currently the medical director of the Parenting at Mealtime and Playtime program through the Ohio AAP, executive board member, and sits on the AAP Foundation Advisory Board and Child Health Pillar. A resident of Hudson for over 26 years, Dr. Sarah has been a member of the Hudson City School Foundation Board and is a new board of trustee for Lawrence Schools, which I think probably many of you are familiar with, a school for learning differences. Her most recent title, and probably her most valuable title, is as grandma to Ava. And she, as I mentioned, is married to John Adams and has two sons, Gabriel and Benjamin. Dr. Sarah's going to be talking to us about her podcast today. So let's give a warm welcome, a good Rotarian welcome to Dr. Sarah Adams.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Before I get started, Terry, I just want to make sure that everything sounds okay. And I'm just really honored. I wish I was there in person. I wish I could say that it was sunny here in Florida, but I'm not going to complain. You know, the weather's in the 70s. And so I realize that the rain makes the flowers grow and everything look green. So I can accept that down here. Well, I'm truly honored to talk today and kind of share my story about how I got from where I started in my career to where I am now. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can do this right. My husband's been my right-hand man here, and we'll get things going. There, yay, I think I've got it. So what I'm going to talk for a few minutes this morning is just kind of how I revived my career and kind of rediscovered my passion and fulfillment. And that's really what my like getting started with the podcast was all about. And so I'm excited. So as Terry said in that really warm welcome, it's I'm a pediatrician, and it's always been a dream of mine to live and work in the same community. So my office is here in Hudson, but one of my most recent titles has been a podcast host to a podcast called Growing Up with Dr. Sarah. So just kind of again, going back to, kind of my first mountain. So I call the podcast and what I'm doing right now with the work through the AAP, et cetera, and through children's is what I call my second mountain. And so, as she mentioned, I had my education, my undergrad education, which was, 4.5 years, 4 years of medical school. A lot of people are always like, what did it really take to become a doctor? And then 3 years of internship and residency here at Akron Children's Hospital. And then, as she mentioned, 27 years now. And in that time period, I was involved in boards and committees, teaching, love to teach, public speaking. I was on the PTA, et cetera. And all that was just wonderful and great. But, I think as everyone, this particular statement is really about physicians, but I think this can resonate with not just healthcare, but really anybody. And it's where you have an occupation and it just results, this burnout results from that chronic workplace stress, that isn't successfully managed, which is really on us, right? And you get that energy depletion, you feel tired, you start to feel negative. And I love my job. I mean, I have the greatest job in the world. I get to work with children. I get to work with really great families. I've watched them grow up all these years. And so I don't know even how I could feel negative at all. And this was even before the pandemic, because then 2020 hit and boom, So I was already feeling some burnout before 2020. And then all of a sudden 2020 hit and it was like, what is happening? I remember John said to me, you signed up for this. And I was like, no, I never signed up for this. I don't think anybody signed up for this. And so it was a moment in my life where I really needed to kind of say, what do I want to do? Because I I I still feel like I'm young. I wasn't ready to throw in the towel, definitely not. But I really wanted to kind of regenerate and really find that joy in my work again, in what has been such a big part of my life. So I got a little inspiration about the mountain kind of analogy from my son. This is my son, Gabe. And I love this picture for so many reasons. Of course, I love it because he's in it. um, I love, he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and I was so proud of him. He's very athletic, but he wasn't really a hiker. And to, spend a month, or not a month, a week going up and then down, this summit was really an inspiration to me. And I love his shirt too. Like, I can do all things. So when it comes to kind of hitting that wall, when it comes to burnout, it's really on us, to say, what do I need to do? I even, to be transparent, during that time saw a psychologist who specifically worked with physicians and resiliency. And he said to me, you really have three choices. You could either keep doing what you're doing, which of course was just, I wasn't happy. He said you could just walk away, which, as I mentioned before, wasn't really ready for that. I love what I do. He said, or you can find a way to do things different, and it's really on us. So I took that leap of faith. I decided, all right, I'm gonna do something different. And then I started to think like, what can I do to, that still involve pediatrics, that still help people? Because what I was finding, I think that was really hard for me and created that workplace stress was that, when 27 years ago, and I think we can all resonate from this, my patients we had continuity care. We had time with our patients, so they had more access to me. I had more time for them. And as time, grew, what was happening is I was finding that I didn't have as much time to spend with my patients. There wasn't as much of the continuity that I really like thrived on. And all of a sudden, what I loved about pediatrics was teaching. The Latin word for doctor is docere, which means to teach. And that's what I love about doing it. And that's what I like about pediatrics, because yes, we talk, I take care of the sick, but a lot of what I do is wellness and helping families be the best that they can be. And there was less time for that in like a 15-minute visit. That was so hard to do. So I think that's what I was really searching for, is like, how can I now talk about the things that we just don't have time? So that's when I was driving through Hudson, and I'm on Main Street, and as you're going down 91, right by the clock tower, I'm at that intersection at that red light. And all of a sudden I look over and I see this studio. And the studio is called Pod Populi. And I thought, what is that? And I'm like a podcast, like a podcast. So I was like, I really wasn't even aware of, like, I kind of knew, but I didn't, so I researched it. I'm like, okay, it's a digital audio program, right? And there's like a series of these episodes and people can download them or stream them. And it's kind of like a radio show, for those that aren't aware, like I wasn't, except you can subscribe, you can listen whenever you want. And there's all kinds of topics. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So I thought to myself, oh my goodness, maybe this is where I can share information and meet parents where they're at. Because in this millennial world, and I have nothing against, you know, I, I don't really follow the whole like Gen Z, Gen X, whatever, but let's face it, the families today, the young families today that I serve they're very digital, right? Everything at the palm of their hand. And I was finding that there's so many ways to connect with families, but now this was a way that they wanted to connect. This is how they wanted material, like how to visit. So I had to think about like, well, why do I really want to do this? And again, as I mentioned before, there's always so many questions, but not enough time in my office that I thought, creating a podcast that people can go to and hear about common concerns and questions that they have in their everyday life. This is a picture of, her name is Maureen Pasanik. And I met Maureen when I was on the PTA in Hudson. She was the nutritionist, the dietitian that worked about throughout the lunch, for all the lunches at all the schools. And her and I created several different programs while she was here. And I'm so proud to still have a great relationship with her. She's now more of a freelance. So she works with multiple different districts to help them really create healthy lunches and meals. And so it's not all pizza and French fries, etc. But it's one of the things that I've loved about doing this podcast is the relationships that I have made along the way. So let me share some of the things that, like, okay, I told you why I started. I kind of said, all right, I want to meet parents where they're at, because this is where they go to find information. They go to the internet. And as you and I both know, Googling or search and everything, because of freedom of speech, and I love that we have freedom of speech, of course, anybody can write about anything, but I was very concerned about what people were reading and finding out. So I wanted to be that source, that digital source, and talk about everyday topics, but also tough ones too, because a lot of times there's so much stigma. Today, I have the opportunity to speak to a mom of a child who was born with dwarfism. And I'm excited to learn about her journey and how she's kind of first overcoming just the shock of, I'm going to have a child with dwarfism, and then how to turn that around to make it something really great. So the idea is really to support parents or anyone who takes care of children, because we know it's not always the parent. It could be a grandparent, it could be, but also even for me now, I love the idea because, of course, my kids are there to take care of Miss Ava, but I want to make sure I'm up to date, on things. Of course, as a pediatrician, doesn't make me a perfect parent or a perfect grandparent. So I love that that this was an outlet. I love sharing also stories about my experiences in my family and hear others. And because I always say that kids weren't born with a manual, right? They didn't read the book. And my sister-in-law asked me once, she said, "Are you like the perfect parent?" And I'm like, "Oh, if my kids read all the books I read, I would be," but they didn't. So, and every child is different, as you know. So I love this part of it. So what I made my goal was I wanted to teach. I wanted to tell stories. And ultimately, at the end of the podcast, I hope that I'm sharing tools that families can go out and live their best life. And like I mentioned, so I connected and with Pod Populi, because the next step was, okay, well, now I see this is podcasts are kind of a cool thing to do. Really great way for me to share information and meet great people. But how do I do that? And there's really a couple ways. People do it either by joining a studio with a contract, which is what I did. And Pod Populi is right here in Hudson. They were on Main Street, and now they're in the building where Great Clips is. And they've been such an encouragement to me because they've been teaching me so much, because of course, I knew pediatrics, but I didn't know much about creating a program like this. And these are some pictures of some recordings that I've done. And I've had kids on my show. I've had young adults, as you can see, professionals like Maureen, as I mentioned, who is a nutritionist. And I'm so grateful because I've also had the opportunity to be on other podcasts too, and have guests on my show as far as Australia and London. So it's been a really cool experience just getting to meet people from all over the world. And so, excuse me, when I started the podcast, I thought, all right, well, I need a logo. I need to define, or anyone who wants to start, this is me or anybody, you kind of have to have your niche, right? And your topic. Of course, for me, it was easy to think of, and that was pediatrics. And interestingly enough, I'm really one of the only ones in the country that has a podcast like this. You want to build your brand. I came up with the title. I chose growing up because for me, that's been the greatest joy in my practice, is watching kids growing up. I feel like I've grown up, with a lot of these families. And so I thought, this was a great title for me. And then you have to source, how you're going to record and edit. And as I mentioned, I decided to do it in conjunction and collaboration with a podcast company. And of course, then you need to promote it. And so I actually, again, took that leap of faith, and I have someone who helps me because, the social media is one of the best ways to promote. And so I have somebody that helps me with that. So again, I joined the podcast studio. I bought some remote equipment too, so that I can record here in Florida. I had to come up with content, and that really hasn't been difficult for me. I've always been someone who could talk about anything, have stories for every topic. And so the content that I've had has been anything from, mental health, like I mentioned, anxiety, depression in teens, but other topics too, like reading and how to build literature, that kind of literacy in your children from young age. We've talked about things like, of course, nutrition and, becoming more active, but also things such as like next week, I'm going to be talking to somebody who is going to help families understand standardized tests and how to prepare for them. And then when I get to do, if I don't have a guest, I usually put in a little snippet of my own, like we'll talk about the different types of cough, or even just gone as far as like, what are the different colors that you find in a baby's diaper? So it's really kind of reached the gamut of so many different topics, which is fun. And I just kind of go into my toolbox and think, what are people really asking for? But what I've learned along the way since I started is that what I really want to share is what you can't just Google and find out. Answering the questions that people have that aren't easy to find. And so, finding guests who can share that type of information. The good news is you might say, well, how do you find these guests? And I'm thankful to say that they've found me. So I get emails almost every day, if not weekly, of people who say, hey, I know somebody, or I'd like to be on your show. And so as course, as time went on, that became easier and easier. So of course, I'll just sell a little buzz out there right now. If you've got something you feel families would really benefit and share from. And even John came on and we talked about finance and how to talk to your kids about money. I'd love to talk about anything. Every time I have a podcast, I have to create a title, which, is interesting because there's something called search engine optimization. So the title is very important because you want it to be not just eye-catching, but when people are searching on the internet, you want your title to be coming up quickly. And then show notes and, of course, edits. I try really hard with the podcast, though, to just go with the flow. So it's a recording. It's not live. I would like to say there are some podcasts that are live. Mine is recorded ahead of time and it is edited, but for the most part, I really tell my guests, I just want this to be authentic and true. And, but also by editing it, it gives them a chance if they kind of have a block or they just want to restate something again. Those are the little edits that we do. And of course, marketing. One of my goals this year, though, I didn't do it for the money, as I mentioned right off the beginning. My why was always to share information, but there is opportunity for monetization. And I'm sure my husband, who's listening from the other room, is probably thinking, yeah, that would be nice because it is an investment, working with the podcast company, of course, working with somebody in marketing and just the equipment. But I'm so loving it and have truly found that joy again. And I'm happy to say that I reached 100 episodes. So we had a little party and in the studio, and I'm just really proud. And I'm really thankful too for John, for my family, for everyone who's kind of supported me along the way. And I'm really excited in 2024 to have some great guests and get to learn. I learn just as much as I get to share. So Albert Hubbard, who was an English artist, said once, your career path can only truly fulfill you when it leads you to become the absolute best version of yourself. To achieve that, your career goals should be aligned with your broader vision of that best version of you. So I just want to say thank you so much for letting me share kind of how I turned burnout into joy, into fulfillment again, into something that I truly love. And this is just from my my social media platform where I help parents navigate and any caregiver, the highs, the lows, and the in-between when it comes to raising a family. So please follow me. And like I said, I've got over 100 topics to list from, and there's many more coming. And the way that you can follow or subscribe is like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really wherever people listen to their shows. And it's I find that I tend to listen when I'm driving in the car or cleaning the house. And it's just you can listen and enjoy pretty much wherever you're at. So again, thank you again. Thank you, Terry, for inviting me. Thank you all for letting me share my story. And I'll tell you if, again, if you're interested in being a guest, I'd love to have you on my show. If you're interested in just talking about how I kind of took that leap of faith and turned that burnout into fulfillment, I'm always here. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sarah. Thank you very much. So if you have a few extra moments for a Q&A here, and I would love to ask the first question, and it's
Sure.
very basic because I have adult children, and I'm sure most of you do, who are constantly saying, I listened to this great podcast the other day. They listen to podcasts all the time, and they tell me, oh, I listened to this great one, that great one. I don't know how to find a podcast. Okay, so, and I'll think to myself, boy, I should listen to some of those podcasts, but I'm really not familiar, and I'm fairly savvy on a computer, but I don't really know how to do that. Maybe some of you are better at it, but for a very basic question, I would go to your website, the Dr. Sarah website, and just hook my phone in. I just don't know how to do that.
No, I think that's a, excuse me, I think that's a great question, actually. I mean, one thing about my website is it has all the episodes so that you can just click to. But if you want to, so of course, if you wanted to listen to mine in particular, that's one way to do it. But if you have like an Apple product, whether it's an Apple computer or phone, or if you don't, Google. So there's Apple Podcasts, there's Google's podcasts, and there's Spotify, there's iHeartRadio. So you can go to one of those apps and then from there, you can start your search in looking for podcasts and different topics. So the way to do that, so let's just talk through with like Apple Podcasts. So you would go through, that particular app or that search engine. If you wanted to, you can even do that on a computer. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on your phone. And you can go and search podcasts. And then what I would recommend is, because there's so many out there, is there, just like you can pick your music, you can pick the genre. So a lot of people, let's say, love crime podcasts, like they love to listen to crime stories, or maybe sports, or again, maybe things that to help with your family. So I would suggest then picking a genre, and then you can see the different podcasts. So basically you would go through those different kind of engines. And, as I mentioned, there's Apple, there's Spotify, there's iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Though that's the window or the open door to find out the different ones.
Great, thank you. I'm going to put this mic back over here. Does anybody else have a question they would like to? I think we're down one microphone.
Hi, Sarah. Tom Tobin here.
Hi, Tom.
Good morning. Thanks for doing this today. Hey, now tell us, because I think we'd be curious too. You're still practicing, right? Right? But
Yes.
you've made an adjustment in the way you do your practice that is probably also, I think, given you, has made it work better for you and lets it take less of a toll on you. It's not sucking the fun out of being a pediatrician as much, right? So tell us just a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Thank you for sharing that. So obviously, when I had decided this, there's only so much time in the day. And what I had decided to do is I went PRN in my practice. And what that means is I work with our office manager and I work anywhere between like 4 to 8 days a month. And that also includes meetings, teaching, et cetera. And so I'm doing more, I'm in the office clinically seeing patients less than I used to be. Of course, I want to continue to maintain that mostly because I love it, but and want to still serve my families, but also to make myself accountable, to staying up on the information. But then it's also afforded me the opportunity to do the podcast, to become more involved with the Academy of Pediatrics and also with Akron Children's, because I teach a couple times a month also workshops on communication and healthcare. So the way I not only just creating that second mountain included not just creating the podcast, but also creating the life that I wanted to that had more balance. So that balance of teaching, that balance of clinical work, that balance of committee work as well. And then, of course, more outreach in regards to the podcast. And I find myself busier than I've ever been, but I love it.
Hi, I'm Patricia Getz. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and thanks for your talk. I now only work 1 day a week, so I know how I've handled burnout. One of the things I don't know if you're aware of, that there is, it's a national, international, but I'm familiar with it out of Neomed, that they have a project called Project Echo. And they
Yes.
have it on different topics. There's one on integrated medicine, and there's one on severely psychiatrically ill kids. And people from anywhere can come and listen, and there's always a didactic and then case presentations. So that may be something that you could also be a part of, because it really reaches a lot of people out there, especially professional people that need more education.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually, one of the things that was a big challenge for me in 2020, and I think, again, kind of talking about things were kind of brewing before 2020 even occurred. And that was, the mental health crisis. I remember reading at one point that they felt that the mental health crisis was as much of a pandemic as, as COVID was. And I would agree with that. And one of the things that I did as a professional was an ECHO program that you mentioned. Thank you so much. Through University of Cincinnati about anxiety and depression. And it is an excellent, excellent program. And I learned so much because in the old days, if I felt like somebody needed help, medication, etc., I would just refer. 5-10 years ago, I wasn't prescribing antidepressants or anti-anxiety as a primary care physician. Now, of course, I am. That's a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, depending, but I had to educate myself. So ECHO is, and it like you mentioned, is goes all over. I've also participated in one in childhood obesity as well as autism. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is an excellent program.
Hi, Sarah. This is Mary Lenore. I have my career is about 45 years in the periphery of working with physicians. This is really very, very innovative what you're doing. But I've seen since COVID that now that insurance companies will pay for e-visits, is that affecting pediatrics as well? Are you doing digital visits with patients too? Could you explain how that's impacted your profession too?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And it's wonderful to see you. When was the lockdown, we really had to pivot. We all did, right? And the virtual world became something that, many of us had never experienced. I know this is what for John especially, he could speak to the fact that he does majority of his work now virtually. But, as a physician, for me, it's always been about seeing and touching the patient and being, hands-on, and so this is very, very different. So yes, we had to learn about telehealth and e-consults and et cetera. And it was more prevalent, I would say, in 2020, in the beginning when we were trying hard not to bring patients out of their home and into the practice. When we started, that, of course, the government, and there was a lot of legality around that. So that was the first part, is just kind of managing that part of it. And then what we needed to do is decide what exactly did we feel we could do virtually versus what we needed to do where we actually had to listen to the heart, to the lungs, feel the belly. And so there was a lot of innovation going on, saying, okay, what can we do medically that is appropriate digitally to provide standard of care? And then what really meant this patient needs to come in. And so that was probably the first challenge, especially for me, because I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going to talk to somebody about a cough online, but I can't listen to their lungs. So that was a challenge. Now, I would say here in 2024, we are still doing virtual visits, and many of them are, I would say for me in particular, is surrounded by things more to do with mental health. And but we also now, Children's has their own like quick care online. And so I've served that as well. And so we had to go through some training, through electronic medical records, et cetera, to prepare ourselves to be able to provide good care, but do it online. So I guess for me, the biggest challenge was pivoting from, okay, now I can't listen with my ears. I can't, see with my eyes and as well as I normally would. But I do think that we've adjusted, and it's definitely less than the year of 2020, but now we're learning exactly when is the best time to do it and when it's just time to see in person. I think I can't speak much about, the how we got paid to do all of that. I know that's a bigger challenge because thankfully, being an employee of Akron Children's Hospital, I don't have to worry about that too much, but I do know as far as documentation, we had to be very specific, and so on, but it is getting better, which is good for all.
Any other questions for Dr. Sarah? We're good? Thank you so very much for your information today.
Well, thank you for having me, and God bless everybody, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Tell John we all say hello. All right. I think that was particularly interesting. I don't know about you guys, but this is something I've been interested in for a long time, simply because, Doug, I'll have to have you give me a lesson on how to find that on my phone. Oh. Here. Did you? And then it feeds directly to you now on a regular basis, probably. Yeah. My kids are always telling me, oh, I listened to this great podcast and this. I do. That would be fabulous.
You know what? We should do that for everybody sometime. And I will tell you that I don't listen to as many podcasts as her children do, but I absolutely love it because you're able to get to topics, very specific things, and you don't have to deal with all the chaff. You get right to the meat of what you're interested in listening to. Oh, yeah. And you can listen to it on your timetable. It's like, you know,
Well, and there are podcasts for anything you could possibly be interested
yeah.
in. Or want to learn. So you can, I know there those can all be Google. I know that you can find a podcast on anything that would be of interest to you from a financial standpoint to fun to how to do something. I know they're out there. So I think it's probably an avenue that we all could really appreciate because we're at a point in our lives where maybe we have a little time to listen to some of this stuff and get informed and keep up to date with what's going on. So let's get our lesson.
Yeah, right here.
Here, you guys,
Podcast.
all right,
The
here.
camera really is not picking it up very well. It's-
But is there,
yeah.
you have
Yeah, yeah.
podcast app?
All right,
Yeah.
well, here, tell everybody.
Just go to application, go
There
to
you
your
go.
app.
Yep.
store.
Well, I guess the little primer here, I tried to do it on the screen. I thought that'd be real easy to show you. Oh, there we go. Noah's, he'll give us the primer. On your, if you have an Apple, there's a little purple icon, looks just like that one right there. You click on that. And then there's a little search bar at the bottom, little magnifying glass. Once you click on that magnifying glass, there's a little bar at the top and you can type in the name if you know it. So growing up. With. I am very, I was been against it all my life, to be honest with you. Oh, wait, I missed the G. Oh, but I found it growing up with Dr. Sarah, and then it lists the episodes. And you can even at the top of it, there's the 3 little dots. You click that and it'll say, ask you if you want to follow. Click follow, and then there you are. They'll always be there for you. But yeah. Yes. Right. Yes. When you first get there, there are little boxes, and the boxes give you the genre. New beginnings, top charts, by language, sleep, true crime, comedy, news, religion, spirituality. That sounds like a good one. Health and fitness, self-improvement, so on. And so you can just click that, and then they'll give you the list, they'll rank the top podcasts, and then you can search in there as well. So just there's a podcast button on iPhones. Go there, and it's pretty easy to discover. It's already there. Yeah. Waiting. And somebody else do the Android.
Wait a minute. Hold on here.
You'll have to hold it for me.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if you have Android, you go to your home screen, you go to your app screen, and you hit Google Podcasts, which is right there. And then it gives you a menu where you could just a search engine, just like Google, where you just type in the title. It's the same. It works the same as iPhones, basically. You go to your podcast app.
Great.
And that leads you, that's.
Well, and I apprise to the fact that if I'm sitting here with a question in my mind, I'm probably not the only one. So I hope that helped somebody besides me figure out how to use these apps for podcasts. And it's just a matter of taking the time to do it and sitting down and running through it like anything else that you educate yourself on. Marilyn? Does anybody have that?
And Terry, I'm still in the meeting. I'm happy to share my screen too and kind of help people walk through it. I can't hear.
Anything else? thing I'm laughing. $8 payout today. Okay. Okay. All right. We have an $8 payout today. Let's have our senior Rotarian pull the number for us today. Yeah, I think so. Correct? That's your designation today anyway. Well, have at it. Okay. All right, ready? 924748. Well, for your birthday. All right, we're getting down here, so should be. Oh my goodness, we've got a winner. $267. I'm not sure where that cashola is.
But I'm gonna donate what I won.
Oh,
$8.
okay.
$8
Okay, okay. All right, Ron, do you have that? Who's got the payout? Doug? Okay, all right. Okay, hey, congrats. What a day. Great podcast, big winner. It's been a great day. All right, so on to the board meeting, please. And hey, take it easy out there today. It's still a bit windy. Have a good day, everybody.